talk today a bit about the rowing machine, specifically the sequencing of the rowing stroke. There's a lot we could talk about relative to the machine, how you want to improve, make your wads faster, use the machine in general, but the very first component of that is being able to understand the sequencing of the rowing stroke. So I'm going to break that down a bit, explain some pitfalls I see in some typical CrossFit workout situations, and give you some keys on how to make your rowing better today. So, I'm going to get on the machine. Now, there's two phases to the rowing stroke, and I'm going to use these terms a couple of times. The first one is the drive, which is where I've got the handle and going back. This is where I'm putting on the power and it's reflecting in the monitor on the machine. And then the second part is the recovery, where I'm recovering, but also preparing myself to take the next stroke. The preparation is a very key component of that. So I'm going to break the drive down first into a couple of different phases. And the very first one is going to be my start position. This is also known in rowing terminology as the catch, because if you're actually in a boat, this is where the oar catches the water and you start your stroke that way. Now, some key things to keep in mind about this position. I want to have my arms long and extended, reaching towards this flywheel up here, towards the monitor, whatnot, but I don't want to be overextending myself such that I can't really engage my back, because that's very important. You're not in a boat, you don't have 7 other people whose body types you need to line up to. So you want to be long, but also mindful of your own different leverages and your own flexibility. I want my shins about perpendicular, maybe a little less. There's no need to make this the longest possible stroke. The longest stroke on the machine is not necessarily the most effective stroke. Now, the way that I'm going to apply power against this resistance is I'm going to start with my biggest muscles, and I'm going to work towards the smaller muscle groups, order of operations. So the way I'm going to pry this resistance first, which anybody who's ever deadlifted or lifted weights at all knows, is I'm going to use my biggest muscles first, which for me in this position are my legs and my back. And these are going to work together to pry this handle backwards. So when I'm moving backwards, if you look at my handle and my seat, these should be moving together. And that shows that I'm really getting this connection in the front part of the stroke. Using my back, like I'm wrapping my lats around a pole that's behind me, and also with my legs together. So that's the first part of the stroke here. Now, a lot of people will do one of two things incorrectly in this position. They'll either shoot the seat out first, or they'll swing the upper body back. And whether you're more flexible, you tend to be more likely to shoot the hips back first. If you're less flexible, your body's already pretty upright, you want to swing the shoulders back instinctively. You don't want to do that. You want these two pieces to be moving together. So this is the first part of the stroke. And also keep in mind, when you start a rowing stroke from a dead stop, this resistance does not stay the same. When you're actually actively rowing, it will get lighter, but you still need to make sure that you've got this correct position so you're getting the most out of your power on the stroke. Now, about partway back, again, depending on individual leverages and what position you're starting from, the upper body is going to open up as my legs go to full extension. When my upper body opens up, notice that my body is coming back, not my arms to start this with. Order of operations, my shoulders, my back are stronger than my arms. So I generate all this power, my upper body swings open, and then my arms come in to finish. So it's going to look like this. Just pay attention to the drive portion right now. So I'm getting that nice big whoosh because I'm generating this power with my big muscles, and I'm using my small muscles to finish it off. I'm going to pause in this position for demonstration purposes, but when I'm actually rowing, I don't really want to spend time here. I don't want to spend time in this position or at the front end of the machine, because I want to get this smooth, fluid, consistent, fast rowing stroke. So a good finish, I'm engaging my core, my arms are finishing off, bringing the handle into me, right below your chest, and one thing I want to make sure I'm not doing is, again, trying to get a longer stroke any way possible, but really exaggerating the beheading rowing stroke, if you will. And I also want to make sure that I'm not dumping into my lat like this big heave, like it was so heavy and now I've just finished it here. Part of that is just because you never want to drop your chin because it cuts off your air supply. You always want to be able to breathe freely, especially in an exercise like this. And it's also just not effective. I've generated all this power. All I have to do is finish it off with my arms. So what I'm going to do, that being the entire drive portion of the stroke, is I'm now going to come back up towards the front end of the machine on the recovery. And the recovery, as the name implies, is important because it gets you set up for your next stroke. A lot of times, you know, when you're really, really going, obviously the monitor reflects when you're putting all this power on. It doesn't reflect when you're coming back up to the machine to take your next stroke. That doesn't mean you want to rush the process, row it like you stole it, if you will. So the first thing I'm going to do is the exact opposite of how I got to this position. I'm going to extend my arms, then my body, then bring my legs up. Now obviously I did that very segmented, that's for demonstration purposes. Arms, body, legs. And we'll get more fluid as I go faster, and I'm still bringing my arms, my body, and my legs. And notice this position that I've got my upper body in, I want to hold that from the minute I set it all the way to here, going back the other direction. I'm going to take a few strokes to show that. So a couple of things that I see here, and again, when you're in the middle of a WOD, you're trying to finish, you're going as fast as possible, things need to get simplified because you're moving really quickly. So a couple of keys just to keep in mind when you're coming back up the stroke on the recovery. It's not going to be necessarily arms, body, legs. However, you do want to make sure that the handle crosses your knees before you raise them. This is very, very important. If you watch how I've been going, I have pretty much a straight, even plane here. And that's really important because that's the most efficient way to row. If suddenly I'm here and I'm like, oh no, I need to take my next stroke immediately, and I bring my knees up, I start doing what is sometimes referred to as the mountain rowing method, which is where I have to physically clear my knees to get back up, take my next stroke. I'm in a tough position, I'm using more effort. That's all wasted, there's no point for that. Just let the legs stay down until the handle clears, then raise them back up. Hopefully this gives you a better understanding of the sequencing of the rowing stroke. Using the big muscles to generate the power, and then essentially staying out of your own way, letting yourself breathe, getting yourself prepared for the next stroke. And when you're doing a workout that involves potentially thousands of rowing strokes, this is really important. So I hope that you found that useful, and you have this great work capacity. You guys are CrossFitters. You shouldn't waste it on crappy rowing technique.